Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining Ten2Two this evening for our webinar on creating a winning CV. As experts in flexible and part-time recruitment and consulting, we have a wealth of experience in this area, and we'd like to share some of this with you this evening. I'm Jane O'Gorman, Director of Ten2Two and your co-host for this evening, and I'll be keeping an eye out for any questions that you may have during the session. Just pop those on the Q&A below. Now, we only have 30 minutes for the webinar, plus some additional time to allow for questions. So, without any further ado, I would like to hand over to my lovely colleague, our MD, Deborah O'Sullivan, to kickstart the presentation. Over to you, Deborah.
Well, thank you, Jane. Welcome to everyone. Thanks for giving up an hour of your time to cover this topic tonight. Hopefully we'll keep it interesting and engaging. We're going to do a really quick whistle-stop tour of what a great CV looks like. I'm going to talk for about 25 minutes, 30 minutes. We'll be sending out a CV template tomorrow, which has a guide in it as well. So obviously write notes if you want, but if you don't want to, there'll be an aid memoir out to you tomorrow. So I shall quickly move on to the agenda, just so you've got a good idea of what we're going to cover. We're going to cover, why have a CV in the first place, where to start, and some basics. The main part of the presentation is all about the core of your CV, what it should contain, what it shouldn't contain. Then we're going to move on to what to avoid, and then a quick summary with room for questions. Jane may well interrupt me with questions if there's some pressing ones, but I'll just carry on unless I'm interrupted. So the first question is, why a CV? Now, first and foremost, its purpose is actually to get you an interview. You want a hiring manager or a recruiter to read your CV and immediately put you on their yes pile. It's still really the primary currency in the recruitment industry. There's testing now, there's sort of video snippet interviewing, but the CV is the first thing that gets you onto a recruiter's desk and potentially into that pile to be shortlisted for an interview. So you want it to be a really well presented selling document, and the key word there is selling. It will also be a script for talking about your career. So in interviews, recruiters and hiring managers will always have your CV to hand. They will prep questions around your CV. So you want to make sure your CV honestly reflects what you've done, what you've achieved. You want it to be tailored for the role you're seeking. Gone are the days, unfortunately, where one CV fits all the purposes of every job you're going to go for. You want to tailor it at least a little bit for every new job that you apply for. And you want to, in that tailoring, highlight the experience that you have that's relevant for that role. So the whole purpose of it is to get you on that yes pile, and that's the way you do it. So where do you start? Now, some of you will have an existing CV and will probably just add to it every time you have a new job, which is absolutely fine. What we would say is make sure you have a good read of it every time you add a new job. So make sure it's the same format, that you're mirroring what you've done before, and make sure it doesn't lose its effectiveness because you're just adding each role. I often think it's better if you just start from scratch. If you're not happy with your CV, you want a document that you're proud with. So I think it's quite useful to just clear your mind, start again, use your old CV as your aid memoir, but start with a blank sheet of paper. So if you're going to do that, the first thing to do, and this is true even if you're just reviewing your existing CV, you need to get your head in the right space. It's not a quick job. It's not something you can do between bathing the kids or walking the dog. You need a couple of hours to just sit and think carefully about what you've achieved, what you've done in your career, what you want to show about yourself. And then you need to consider your audience in that process. So you may send your CV off to a hiring manager, the person who actually you're going to work for. But very often it's to a recruiter, It might be first received by a very junior person who actually doesn't know anything about the job. They just have notes to look for 10 keywords. And at the very lower level of that, it might just be AI. You might be sending your CV off and a computer might literally be scanning for keywords. So think about your audience when you're writing it, and it could be any one of those 4 things. Be clear of your work goals. So if you know you want to work part-time, or you want to move it back into a creative industry or move into a creative industry, then be clear before you start writing, because then your CV will reflect what it is you're looking for. And then create a basic outline. The template I mentioned earlier will give you those headings, and you can start adding in all the personality of yourself and your career into the template. So some basics, and these really are basics, so forgive me if you know all this, but sometimes people don't. The first thing you want is your contact details. You don't have to write everything. So a name, a town where you're based or postcode, a phone number, probably your mobile, and a LinkedIn address is all you need. Put it in the header of the CV and make sure it appears on every page, so that if the CV ends up being printed, a page gets lost, they don't lose your contact details. I mentioned LinkedIn there. We would recommend everybody has at least a basic LinkedIn profile with a nice professional photograph and some top level details of your career to date. If you don't have one, it's not the end of the world, but it does say something about your attitude to technology and how engaged you are in that modern world. So we recommend at least a basic one. In terms of format, and this does often surprise people, what happens with your CV once you send it in, lots of things can happen to it. And the more complex your format, the less likely it is to come out the other end of the process looking like you wanted it to. So we recommend doing a CV in a Word format, 10 or 12 font in Calibri, Arial, something really quite simple, and using bullet points. If you're a creative, I absolutely understand you might want to do something more design-led, and that's absolutely fine, but just be aware that as soon as CVs are put through any processes, so maybe a recruiter system or a job board system, often the systems can't read complex formatting. So you need to be aware of that. And lots of people use PDFs, and often PDFs are not managed very well by this technology. So Word document is the safest thing. Length, it's always the million-dollar question, but if you can, 2 pages is what you want. A page really isn't quite enough to describe what you've done, or it's unlikely to be enough. More than 2 pages, it's unlikely it will get read. So ideally 2 pages. I appreciate that, you know, the longer the career you've had, the harder it is to do that. So if you do tip over into 3 pages, it's not the end of the world. Don't fret about it. I personally, as a recruiter, think it's better to have 3 pages of well spaced out text than 2 pages of teeny tiny text with very wide and narrow margins. So yeah, so don't get too hung up on that. Relevance. I'm going to keep coming back to this throughout the conversation, but what you want is your CV to be relevant to the job you're going for. So if you've got education, training, previous roles that are relevant to the job, bolster those up, highlight those more than other things. And then we talk about photo or not. Our current advice is don't put a photo on your CV. It takes up valuable space. Lots of our clients actually are asking us to depersonalize CVs to the point of not even including names. So actually a photo might not even make it to the hiring manager. But if you put your LinkedIn profile address on your CV and have a lovely photo there, then you're covering it off, because most hirers will look at your LinkedIn profile. So you want to keep your CV as easy to read as possible and get yourself noticed.
Great. Deborah, can I just interject there before we,
course.
just a couple of questions coming through on this particular, on the basics. So you touched on the Word doc and the PDF. Is it better to send both? Or if one were to send one, always Word?
You've only got a chance to send one, I would always suggest a Word document. If you can, if you're dealing directly with the recruiter, then send both, there's no harm. If you're working through an agency, agencies will remove personal details anyway, so your PDF will get altered so that your contact details are taken off. If you're going direct to the hiring manager, it might end up as a PDF in the hiring manager's inbox, but you never know.
Okay, just another quick one there on this particular section. Is it always advisable to attach a covering letter with this?
That's a good question, really good question. If you've got an opportunity to, then yes, it's another opportunity to sell yourself. And it's different from a CV because it allows you to talk more about why you are absolutely spot on for the role. You can highlight all the things you want to out of your CV. I'm saying that, I do know that actually cover letters often don't get read. So you don't want to not put something in your CV because you've put it in your cover letter. So I would just say, make sure you cover off all angles, but it does show you're much more interested in a role if you've got the time and opportunity to do a cover letter. Okay, so moving on to the main components of your CV. There's 5 main components. The first one is the profile. And this is a pen picture of who you are in 4 or 5 lines. And the idea is to hook the reader in to want to read more about you. So it mirrors a little bit of your personality. It gives you your title. Are you a marketing manager? Are you a sales manager? Are you an experienced administrator? And it makes the hirer go, oh yes, this is the sort of person I'm looking for. I'll carry on. In the profile, you want to include relevant words and try and mirror the job advert. If you've got the skills the job advert is asking for, literally write the words in the profile. And this is something you can amend for every job you apply for. It doesn't take very long, but it does mean that if you are going into an AI process where it's a computer looking for keywords, you'll get picked up straight away with the keywords if they match the advert. And it's an opportunity to sell your skills and experience, so don't be shy. If you've got 15 years experience in sales and you've never missed a target, then that's your opportunity to say it in that personal profile that would hook the reader in and get them to read on and see what jobs you've done. So that's the profile. Now moving on, we quite like to recommend putting a key skills box. Now this, not everybody does this and not everybody recommends this. As a recruiter, it's really quite helpful. So I've done a little example on the left-hand side here of a potential candidate, and that's quite a lot of key skills actually, but it's a brief bulleted summary of what you can do. So someone's got a pen picture of you from the profile, then they see your key skills and then they're really hooked, hopefully. They might not even read the rest, they might put you straight on the yes pile. Reorder the key skills again to match the job you're going for. So if the first thing they ask for is Sage experience, which is an accounting software, put it first on your list. Again, it will get the hiring manager excited, thinking, yes, this person looks just right for me. And going back to the keyword searching, if you've used software, mention them by name. So lots of people put MS Office or MS Office packages, which is fine, but actually, if you're looking at the keywords, sometimes it's useful to put Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, because if they're looking for those particular things, again, on keyword searching, you'll come up higher. So again, key skills you don't have to have, but I think it's very useful. The next thing everybody has, which is career history. So this is really the bulk of your CV. And you want to start with your most recent employment. So you basically want a chronological story about your career history. Start with your most recent, even if you've had a break. So we always talk about CVs. You don't want to leave the reader with any questions. You want them to read the CV and completely get what your journey's been. So if you have had a break most recently and it's relevant for the job you're going for, put it first. If you've had a break but it's not so relevant, you haven't been doing anything that is relevant for the job you're going for, then just do a simple one line, career break, and move on to your next career, part of your career that is relevant. As a rule of thumb, no more than 10 years. If you've been in the workplace more than 10 years, summarize your roles that are older than that. And the only exception to this, I would say, is if maybe you're changing career direction or you're returning to the workplace. If there's a role in your past that actually is more relevant to the job you're going for now, then you might want to highlight that and bring that up and then make some of your more recent roles less prominent. You want to focus on your achievements, and whilst you're doing that, avoid industry speak and acronyms. I'll come back to think about who might be reading your CV. If your industry is full of acronyms, at least write them out in full the first time you put them on your CV so that a novice reading it will understand what you're talking about. And when I say focus on achievements, by that I mean talk about the things you've actually made happen yourself. So these are things it's worth thinking about, because they're the things that you'll probably talk about in interview, they'd probably be asked about in interview. And use data, if you can, to back those up. So, maybe you reduced customer complaints by 10%, or you increased sales by 5%. Anything you've got that gives scale to your achievements is really helpful in a CV. And when you're describing them, we say use action verbs. So rather than just repeat a job description, which might just be responsible for this, this, and this, try and use words that show what you did. It could be you managed something, you led something, you authored a paper, things like that. So I pulled a little example here, which I'll just quickly talk you through. So this is, oh look, there's a spelling mistake. That wasn't intentional. But this is a marketing manager at a company, and these are the dates they were there. And what this person's done is done a little quick description of the company. And I would say that that's quite useful if it's a company people don't know what they do. Obviously, if it's a big brand like BT or Sky, there's no need for that. But there's hundreds and hundreds of companies that a recruiter or a hiring manager may not know. So if you describe it here, it allows the hiring manager to be able to go, oh, that's very similar to our industry. This person's going to know what they're talking about. And then reason for leaving. This isn't necessary unless you feel it answers some questions in advance of the person seeing your interview. So if you've had maybe some short contracts, or you relocated, anything that maybe would raise a question mark, and a question mark means you end up on a maybe pile, try and answer it in your CV. So sometimes you see a reason for leaving and sometimes you don't. I think it's very useful. And then as you can see here, the key achievements have been, it's using action verbs, and it's giving you some data in there. So you get a sense of what this person did in that role. So moving on to the final main component of your CV, education, training, and other. So start with the highest level of education first and go backwards. Include relevant training. You may have done some fantastic training, but if it's not relevant for the role and it's taking up valuable space on your CV, either cut it right down or exclude it, because if it's not relevant, it won't help you. If you're struggling with space and you've got letters after your name because of a degree, I'd always recommend putting that in your header by your name, because it saves some space and it automatically tells people what your qualification level is. And then finally, this is, no, it's not that controversial, but there's additional information is the final thing you'll often see on CVs. And I know some hiring managers really don't like it. I do quite like it because it's your chance to give a little snap of your personality, your other interests. So it may be you climbed Ben Nevis for charity, you love running and you're a leader of the running club. So anything that is interesting and factual, but keep it brief. So I think it's a useful thing to add to a CV if you've got the space, but it's not vital. You've got your hand up, Jane.
Yeah, just very quickly on that one, thinking about space and what we've touched on in terms of length of CVs. On the first point on the highest level of education, if I have a degree, should I still put further details going right back to school education, or basically leave it at that?
So it's not necessary. I mean, you could just leave your highest level of education, particularly if you're tight on space. Certainly, if you've got a degree, you don't need to put your GCSE grades. You could just put, but I wouldn't probably put your GCSEs at all. So as much information as you think is relevant for the job. Does that answer your question? Mm-hmm. Oh, cool. So pitfalls to avoid. It's really obvious, but I'll say it anyway. Never lie on a CV, because if you get the interview, your CV will be used in the interview, and interviews are stressful enough. You really don't want to be having to try and remember what you said in your CV if it's not true. Which leads on to talk about achievements that you're confident about. You want to be able to bring the interviewer into the story of your achievements. So it's really important that the things you write on your CV you can remember well, and have practiced speaking about them in an interview situation. That's another one for an interview workshop, but it's quite important, because there's no point putting stuff on your CV that you're not happy and comfortable talking about. Beware of CV building packages. I think these have improved a little, but if you're not careful, they do weird things with formatting. Sometimes we'll see CVs and they'll say insert name here or put references here. So you really don't need them. It's quite a straightforward template. We're going to send you one. I don't really think you need one. And the only thing I would say is I have heard, I've not actually seen any, so I don't know how widely it's being used, but LinkedIn now, you can download your LinkedIn profile into a CV format. So I'm afraid I can't comment on it, but it does exist, if you fancy looking at that. We've already talked about avoiding fancy fonts, fancy formatting, unless it's critical for the job. And just leading on that, if you have got a design background and you want your CV to look more designery, one of the things I would say is always include a link to your portfolio and load your work separately on the web, so an employer could look at that, much the same as your LinkedIn link. Long acronyms we've talked about, avoid that, and unexplained gaps. So again, we're back to this. You want a chronological story, a journey that talks about what you have achieved in your career, and explain the gaps. It just means that there's no question mark over what you've done. And finally, avoid anything that raises a question. So if somebody's reading it cold, and actually this is what I would say, is that once you've got your CV, get someone else to read it, because someone reading it cold will go, oh, so what happened there then? And you might not have thought about it because it's obvious in your head because it was your life. So it's good to get other people to read your CV. So to summarize, I'm going to start here, an easy read. What we've talked about is what you want is concise, comprehensive, descriptive and personal documents with the aim of getting you an interview. We want to leave no question marks at all. So we want a clear chronology, clear rationale about your career. We want it to be relevant to the job you're applying for and every job you're applying for. So we do see people have a base CV, and then what they do is they slightly edit their personal profile, slightly reorder their key skills. So you don't have to rewrite your CV for every job, but do spend 10 minutes finessing it and tailoring it. If you haven't got direct experience for the role you're going for, the other thing you can do on a CV is show your transferable skills. And what you would do there, sorry, I haven't covered it, but what you would do there is under your key skills, you'd then talk about transferable skills, or you might not do key skills at all. And you might list your transferable skills to show why you could do that job. And then you want to move, the aim of this whole thing is to get you onto the yes pile and be invited for an interview. So that's what a good CV will do for you. So, any questions?
We do.
Lots.
Yeah, I'm just trying to grasp a few here to see what we can cover in time, but you touched on the skills here, Deborah, so that would be a good one to think about now from Jane. So if I'm wanting to change industry and completely different role, is a chronological CV still the best format as opposed to a skills set format?
It is a really good question. So what I would say is you want a bit of both, actually. So your personal profile should reflect the fact that you recognise you haven't worked in that sector or industry, but why you think you've got the transferable skills to do it. Then I would bullet point your transferable skills and then do briefer chronological what your career history is. Because it doesn't matter how transferable your skills are, the hiring manager will want to know what industries you've worked in, what companies you've worked for, how long you were there and what you achieved, so they can see the transferability. So you have to sort of do a bit of both. Does that help?
Great. Yep, useful, thank you. Another one from Rebecca. If I carry out unpaid roles, and we do see this on CVs actually, if I carry out unpaid roles, such as treasurer, trustee of a charity, where should I put this, and should I put this on a CV?
Absolutely. You know, assuming that you're going for a finance-based role, if we just take the treasurer example, if you're going for a finance-based role, absolutely, that's relevant. And you don't need to say it's unpaid. You don't need to say it's voluntary. You can position it on your CV just as part of your career history. And if it's relevant, you absolutely want to do that, because that might be something you've been doing in a break, or that it's showing your commitment because you're doing it as well as work. So yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and we did have a couple of questions, actually, a few questions coming forward on that, particularly, you know, having a gap or taking a break prior to returning to work, how to explain that and how to lay that out in the CV. And sometimes it's those voluntary pieces that may well fill those areas when there's actually some very valuable input in that, as we've seen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another question, is it useful to add at the point of submitting the CV references or testimonials or examples? We're talking about brief CVs here, but actually bearing in mind maybe the cover letter and the CV, is it ever useful to also complement that with other accessories such as, say, testimonials or examples of work?
So with a caveat, yes. So a couple of things you do see on CVs sometimes. I'm going to actually take the screen share off. Stop share.
Okay.
Then I can see you. So you do see on CV sometimes that it says references available on request. And there's no need for that at all. And there's definitely no need to put your referee details on your CV. I have seen, and it worked really well on a couple of occasions I've seen it, where people have literally done a one line in quotes under their job, a little testimonial from their manager or a colleague. And it's nice, you know, if you think about your CV as being a sales document, and if you've got the room. So I wouldn't sacrifice achievements to do that, but actually it's a really nice touch if you've got that. The alternative is that you collect I forgot what they call them on LinkedIn now, but testimonials on LinkedIn, and then you can put a link on your CV saying, see my testimonials here.
Like recommendations.
Thank you.
We've had, should I put my date of birth on my CV?
And no.
Very
simple.
That no. It's a quick answer.
There's absolutely no need. And just back to my previous point, lots of clients are actually asking us to anonymize CVs. Some clients will not even look at the CV if it's got a name, date of birth, nationality on it. So there's just no need.
Yeah, and in the case we will, you know, it varies, but we can be required to submit blind CVs.
Yeah.
In fact, so there's a lot of change out there. So, you know, that's something to bear in mind. In terms of the profile that we touched on earlier, is it better for that to be bullet pointed or paragraphed, do you think?
You generally see 4 or 5 lines in a paragraph. So it's literally a pen picture. You can bullet point it. Equally, you can write it in the first or the third person, whatever you feel most comfortable with. I think the most common we see is, I'm a successful, experienced sales and marketing manager. It's that sort of flow. I think there's an example on the template. If there isn't, I can add one.
Okay. And I think it may well be in reference, going back to the template on this, we had another question, and I know we don't have that section of the presentation open, but it was on the skill sets, which are always very useful to have, and they were bullet pointed. But is it ever useful to add additional text on that?
As in extra words rather than just a bullet point? Yeah, I mean, so sometimes you'll see people, rather than do the hard skills, if they haven't got that many hard skills, you know, like project management qualification or project management skills, they might do things like excellent communicator, managed a team of 12. So it might be softer skills that people put in that key skills box. So yes, absolutely. As long as it's bulleted, I think that's the key thing. It's not an essay.
Yeah. There was a couple of questions about different reasons for doing different work and how we should lay that out on a CV. And that might be partly because I'm running my own business, but I also want to do additional work, or I happen to be doing 2 jobs at the same time. But chronologically, they should be side by side, but clearly they may be one below the other, whatever. How do we, or how should I display that on the CV? And would having my own business perhaps put a potential employer off?
Lots of questions, Jane.
I know. Let's try with the 2 jobs at once.
Okay, so 2 jobs at once is absolutely fine. Put the most relevant first. And as long as it doesn't raise a question, if it's obvious, it's fine. You might want to write a little line, which is, you might say 3 days a week, 2 days a week, so that it's clear that you're working them the same time and they're the same, they're alongside each other. So include them both, the most relevant first. Don't feel, so you want this journey to be clear, but don't feel everything has to be included. So it's a bit like, sometimes we see CVs and people put things like part-time job, voluntary job, you know, it doesn't matter. As long as it's not raising a question, things like that aren't vital. Your second question about owning your own business or running your own business, it is an interesting one, because if a client, for example, is looking for a part-time employee, then absolutely there's an expectation you're bound to have other interests or other things going on. If a client wants quite a lot of your time, and it looks like your business is full on, then that's a different discussion, but one that needs to be had, because the question the client might well say is, you know, how committed are you going to be to this? And often we see that people are running small businesses that only they do in the weekends and the evenings. So actually it's not a problem at all for an employer. And you might want to put that on the CV. You might want to put in brackets a couple of hours a week, mainly weekends, you know, if you think it might be a problem. So it does depend what job you're going for, and if the job you're doing that you might own a business for is relevant. Because if it is relevant, you want to include it.
Yeah.
If it doesn't take much time, it's not that relevant, don't even need to put it on your CV.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. We may sometimes see on CVs, and we've touched on it, between either gaps or doing different types of work, that someone may want to be to return to something they did earlier. But of course, perhaps if we're looking at chronological, it may not be top of the list or as apparent. Is it worthwhile putting a title or putting it in the profile, seeking, say, marketing manager position, if that's not actually what the most recent work is? Is it worth actually highlighting that high up on the CV?
Absolutely. So, you know, what I would do is in your profile, you describe what you have been doing and say, looking to return to my previous career, or having started my career as a marketing manager, I'm really keen to return to this. So that's where you do it right up front in the profile, and you'd reiterate it in a cover letter if you had one. And then what you would do is when you get to that on your career history, is you'd bolster that up. You'd write more about that job than maybe one of your more recent jobs that wasn't so relevant.
Point. I think we've just got one last question here we can squeeze in, Deborah.
Okay.
Bearing in mind we want the CV to have as much useful information as possible, is it still worthwhile putting full reference details on a CV, or references available on request?
Already answered that one.
Did you? I know we talked about adding. Did we answer
Yeah,
it?
I did. It's fine. So you don't need to put anything about references actually at all, and definitely you don't need the referee details. It's absolutely fine if you've got room to put references available on request, but it's sort of a given in today's market. It's just a given that, of course, references will be sought, and you're bound to have some. So you don't need to say it.
Okay. Thank you for giving that answer twice. Smashing. Well, listen, I think that's all we've got time for at the moment. Thank you so much, Deborah, for all that very helpful information. Thanks so much to everyone for joining us this evening. I do hope you find the session useful. As Deborah mentioned earlier, we will be sending out a CV template, which hopefully you'll also find helpful. And in addition, there will be a brief survey. Now, we always appreciate your feedback, so it would be great if you could complete this too. Thanks so much again for joining us, and we do hope you'll join us for another webinar soon. Have a great evening, everyone. Bye for now.